welcome to Liam's Lyceum, everyone. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himbar, and today I will be talking about why I DNF books, if I ever do. Now, of course, DNFing means did not finish or do not finish or whatever. It just means you didn't finish a book, essentially, right? So when you don't finish a book, just label it as a DNF. That's a book you didn't finish. I wanted to go over essentially the two reasons why I would ever DNF a book. Now, the reason this came up is because I just DNF'd my first book since I started this channel. Now, I started this channel about 8 months ago, so that just shows you I don't really DNF all that often. I like to think that I generally know what I will enjoy, and I've been rather thorough on trying to figure out if I would enjoy a book before going in, or if I wouldn't enjoy a book, and so just not going in at all. And I feel like I do a decent job at that. I've gotten better over the years. But I recently did put down a book, and it fits into one of two categories. Now, I will talk about the first category, the reason I DNF'd this one first. Now, that book was Hyperion by Dan Simmons, which is actually a book I was really looking forward to, and the parts I did get through, I enjoyed. Now, this is kind of a novel. It is a frame narrative, so it's like the Canterbury Tales, essentially. Essentially it is the Canterbury Tales, at least in structure, which is to say that there's pilgrims going somewhere, and they each tell their individual story, right? And so during the second story is when I decided I'm not going to finish this, and I was actually very close to the end. And I hear a lot of people have problems with this second story, and honestly, I feel like I enjoyed the first story, even though it was disturbing, but it was a horror story, and so I feel like that was kind of the point. I do feel like I would have enjoyed the rest of the stories, but my problem is I don't like having to skip stuff like this second story so I can get to the good stuff. It's the same reason, I don't know if I can make this comparison, where in an MMORPG, that if your end game is good, it doesn't matter to me if everything before end game isn't good. I know a lot of people just care about the end game, which is to say, like, it doesn't matter if the beginning stuff is bad, they just want an end game, or if the end game was bad, it doesn't matter how good the beginning stuff is. For example, like, I like the Neverwinter MMO. I wasn't a big fan of the end game, but I played tons of hours of it because I liked everything that got you to the end game, essentially. But I didn't like World of Warcraft so much because everything before the end game I didn't really enjoy. Now, anyways, that's just a comparison real quick. Now, the reason I didn't finish Hyperion was mostly because of sexual content. That is one reason that is something I decided several years ago that I was going to draw the line at a certain point where I was at a certain level of uncomfortable, that I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to finish this, because, and it's generally in books where the sexual content is just not needed. It makes it seem like the person who's writing it is just being overly sexual, like they need to satisfy an urge, just put it that way. This is definitely an adult topic, I guess. I don't know, it's just something that doesn't sit well with me, and there are several books I've had this reasoning for, or sometimes I do DNF books for a couple reasons. And so this was one of those, though. This story was overly sexual. That's basically the entirety of the story, was the soldier in these simulations, this woman who he has never spoken to, basically, and she is absolutely, literally never said a word to him. And they just sleep together every time he sees her in this simulation, and it's just weird. And that's the whole point of the story. And it's just like, hey, this is supposed to be like a love story, but it's not romantic at all. And I mean, like, it's some weird grossifying of some, like, medieval romantic tale. Anyways, I could not get behind it. I just couldn't. I tried to get through it, and then I was near the end, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is just too much, man. This is way too much, like, way too detailed. What the heck are you thinking? Like, you thought this was okay to put in a book? And I don't know what the editor was thinking. I would have just scrapped the whole story, to be honest. So weird. Anyways, so I wanted to go over some other stories, other books I DNF'd. I believe there's only about 13 or so. I'll go into this first category first. So the first one would be Hyperion, of course, overly sexual. in my mind. And then it would be The Dagger of Adindageath, I think is how you say it. It's book 2 in, actually I got it right here, A Pattern of Shadow and Light. It's by Melissa McPhail. I really enjoyed the first one, The Hand of Sephiroth. Really, really enjoyed it. I give it 5 stars actually on Goodreads. And then I just couldn't get through the early parts of this one because of sexual content, and it also was kind of boring. I thought the beginning of it was, at least compared to the first book. But yeah, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not here for this. So, as well as Old Man's War, which really didn't work with me at all. It just was overly sexual. Again, I mean, it was also trying to be super funny, and I didn't find any of the jokes landed. But the thing that made me really was like, stop, not continue this, was the sexual content in it. And I know some people are going to watch this thing, I'm just a huge baby. And maybe I am. And then we have the 19th Bladesman, which is the first book in the Shadow Sword Shadow Sword series. I don't know how many books are in that series. There was 2 at the time I was reading this. It's by S.J. Hartland. And I thought this one was actually started off super cool. And then it just got into this weird rape, like torture stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm not here for this at all. Like, maybe that's just what the author writes, and I didn't know that going into hand. And it's okay. I mean, like, if you want to read smut, go ahead and read smut. I'm not really going to judge you for that. You know what I mean? But it's not what I wanted. You know what I mean? It's not what I came in expecting. Just like I thought I'd go in expecting some kind of highbrow stuff, honestly, with Hyperion, but also just a good story. And I didn't think there'd be all this sexual content. I don't know how I didn't hear about that beforehand, but I did. And then we had the Fire Mages by Bright Moon number 2. You didn't have to, those are like, you don't have to read them in order, really, so I didn't read the first one. This is by Pauline M. Ross, and it was the same thing. Overly sexual, and it was so weird and gross, and I was like, what? It's just weird. I stopped that one early on because it started happening early on, which is always something that's nicer. Like, if I'm not going to ever really complain about that book because it happened early on, I put it down early on. The next book is one I will really complain about because it happens about 700 pages into the novel, and that is A Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. I really enjoyed The Name of the Wind when I read it. It's been like 8 years or so now, and I really did not enjoy Wise Man's Fears. I always thought it was not as good anyways as the first book, but then you get to about 700 pages in. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of sexual content that just comes out of nowhere. It's just pornographic. I mean, I can't say it's anything else. And if you want to read porn, that's cool, but I don't want to. Maybe I'm being a little harsh here. But so I did not finish the book. I tried to skip it, and then I realized after that was all skipped, he goes and brags about it. And I was like, okay, yeah, not here for this at all. So that's like one of my first real experiences of that, and I was like, okay, this is where I'm drawing the line. Like I said, I tried to skip it, but that didn't work either. I'm gonna try to make this short because I realize I'm talking a lot, but hopefully I'm not trying to rant. I just thought maybe you guys would be interested in knowing why I would not finish books, and as you can tell, it kind of doesn't happen that often. The other reason is it's just boring. This is way too boring. This is typically. This does have a lot to do with my mood. Now I will name a couple here that I will likely read in the future. They're not just ones that I didn't finish and I will never pick up again. They're more of a not right now type of thing. But some where I'm never going to plan on reading them again or ever picking them back up. Now the first on this list was The Bone Ships, the first Tideschild book by R.J. Is it Barker? Yeah, there's too many people with a name similar to that. But yeah, I actually got an arc of this, so this is before the release of the book, and I got about 2/3 of the way through, and I thought it was so boring that I felt so bad, and I was like, wow, I feel like I owe it to the publisher to give some thoughts, but I couldn't make myself get through the book. It was too much in my mind, too unfamiliar. You know, when you're reading stuff, you have to have a level of the familiar. And, you know, the interesting stuff is the unfamiliar, essentially, right? Now, this can be messed with and modified a little bit, of course, but, I mean, essentially that's the idea, right? I mean, it's just why we read a lot of fantasy. It's rather familiar in a lot of cases and rather tropey, right? This was just not all that familiar, and it wasn't entertaining. You know, like, if you're going to take away some of the familiarity, it needs to be at least entertaining intellectually, you know, emotionally, you know, just a fun ride or something, and it just didn't work for me. I realize it's decently popular, so it works for some people, but it didn't work for me at all. And then we have The Lies of Locke Lamora, the First Gentleman Bastards book by Scott Lynch. A lot of people have this similar problem. I really, really didn't like the flashbacks. I got about 200 pages in, and before I put it down. You know, I do like to give it a chance, you know what I mean? I wasn't vibing with any of the characters. I thought they were all cardboard, and it's just the story was not interesting. I didn't care for any of the relationships. Anytime it got even slightly interesting, he'd throw in a flashback that didn't help anything. Now, that's just my experience 200 pages in. I don't feel like it would have gotten better personally, which is why I put it down. I wasn't enjoying it, which was a big disappointment to me, actually. This is why I'm actually better at not reading books I don't think I'll enjoy, which is why I see a lot of people who read a lot of modern stuff, and I was like, yeah, that's cool, you're reading modern stuff, support the author, or, you know, get views and stuff. But I'm just like, yeah, I don't care, that book doesn't sound good, sorry. You can like it if you want, you know what I mean, but I do see some people reading stuff like that and then not really enjoying it. And I feel like that has a lot to do with expectations. I feel like a lot of people don't have an idea of what, you know, really is good expectations or how to get them, which isn't to say I could put them down on paper for you, but I listen a lot, if that makes sense. And I'm not trying to hate on anyone, sorry, I'm in a weird mood. I recorded this video before and I got lost, essentially, and so I'm re-recording it, and I was way nicer the first time. But yeah, The Lies of Locke Lamora didn't work at all. I did not enjoy it. But what I mean by expectations is that this was a recommendation by several booktubers I had watched. I've been watching booktube for a decade, or, you know, whatever. And yeah, I was like, wow, look, you just said this was great and this was bad, you know what I mean? So obviously your opinion is not my opinion, you know what I mean? And so that's when I started getting a lot more careful, because I was already somewhat careful before that. I didn't want to waste my time with boring books anyways. And then we had Royal Assassin #2 Farseer book by Robin Hobb. I enjoyed the first book. I just thought it was really slow and not all that great. Gets a lot of praise, especially in more recent years. And it's good. This is actually one that I will probably read eventually. It was more of a not right now type of thing. Like, I started it, I didn't get very far. It was just not, again, it was too slow. It's just too slow. You know, every once in a while I do like slower books. But I'll be honest, I like quick books. Doesn't mean it has to be short, but if it's long, I prefer it to be quick, unless it's super inviting in some way. And I didn't find the first book to be that way. I didn't find the beginning of the second book to be that way, and so I put it down, and I haven't picked it back up yet. There's been several times where I've thought about it. I mean, I even got the Michael Whalen cover copies sometime last year, you know, and I put this book down in 2018 probably, and so I mean, I do plan on getting to it eventually. Then we had Xenocide, which is the third in the Ender's Game, like, saga thing. I really, really loved the first two books, Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead. Xenocide was just so boring. This one was when I was in high school, so it's been quite a while, but I remember finding it extremely boring, and yeah, just not exciting. So that's about all I'll say on that one, since I'm trying to finish this up now. And there's Gauntlgrim, which is a Forgotten Realms novel, but it's specifically The Legend of Driss #20. I had heard at the time that you could start really anywhere. Since The Legend of Driss, for those unaware, is divided into generally trilogies. There's series that are sometimes like 4 books. I don't know if there's anything that's 5 books, but sometimes there's a standalone or whatever here and there too. It's almost 40 books long now. I've read the first 11 at this point. But at this time that I had DNF'd Gauntlgrim, I hadn't read any. I had read less than 10 Forgotten Realms novels, and if you know me, I've read almost 70 now. And so this was back in 2017 or so, maybe early 2018. And I was like, hey, I like Neverwinter, the MMO, a lot, and so let me read this. I think this should be fun. And I didn't enjoy it at all. I was like, what the heck's going on? I don't like any of these characters. This is boring. I really didn't know what was going on. And honestly, I don't agree. I wouldn't start with Gauntlgrim if I were you, if you're a fan of the Neverwinter games. It is book 1 of the Neverwinter saga, which is one of the 4-book series in The Legend of Driss. And this was actually the beginning of my problems with Driss. But I will almost certainly read it, because I did make a challenge to read all the Forgotten Realms novels at some point, and that includes The Legend of Driss. Yay. And then there's 2 more, real quick. Okay, The Sword of Shannara. I really enjoyed Elfstones and Wishsong, but you really don't need to read The Sword of Shannara. Some people will say that The Eye of the World is a ripoff to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and I would say it's way more of a homage, and if you want to rip off go and read the Sword of Shannara. I don't think that's a bad thing if you want to imitate it that closely, but I found it extremely boring. His prose is not nearly as good as Tolkien's, for example, and it's way less original, obviously. And so I didn't enjoy it, but like I said, I enjoyed the books 2 and 3, and I do plan on reading more Shannara, but I almost certainly will not go back and read the Sword of Shannara. It's not going to happen. I got over 100 pages into it. I was like, yeah, this is not very entertaining. And if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. And then we have The Reach Between Worlds by Cameron M. Hayden. It looks like the Arclight Saga #1. This is that time when I had read a lot of Sanderson, then I read a lot of self-published stuff that was on Kindle Unlimited, which I had at the time. I don't have it anymore. I had read a lot of Andrew Rose stuff, which I honestly haven't read since then either. And I found another author, I was like, hey, fantasy, epic fantasy, this vein of Sanderson of sorts, right? I thought it was just kind of poorly written. It might be rewritten at this point. It might just be a lot better. This was early. This was self-published. I don't know. So I just didn't enjoy it, and I put it down. But anyways, that is why I DNF books. There's either the sexual content where the line has been drawn, if they cross it, it gets thrown in the trash. Generally, not literally. I'll just donate the book. And then there's it's way too boring. But don't get me wrong. I've finished a lot of bad books, or well, not a lot actually. I like I said, I'm pretty good at deciding what is good and worth my time and what's not. There's some exceptions to that, though. I'm looking at the Cleric Quintet. But, anyways, that's why I DNF books. So hopefully this is fiery enough for you, it's spicy, but that's not what I meant it to be. I just wanted to maybe throw out something I thought maybe some of you would be interested in knowing why I would DNF books. And there it is. Hopefully you enjoyed my rambling, I guess. This one, Liam's Lyceum. I do typically reviews on Monday and Friday, and then I do videos like this Wednesday and Saturday, and I'll do a poetry video generally on Thursdays, if I can get all that time together and film those. But it's been Liam's Lyceum. I'll catch you next time.